Have you ever stopped to really think about water? I mean, not just, turning on the tap, but water is this fundamental thing, that cool drink on a hot day, or like how it grows our food. It just seems, well, it's just there, isn't it? But what happens when that thing we take totally for granted starts disappearing
Right.
right under our feet? What then? Today, we're going deep. We're looking into a really critical situation happening right now in Karnataka, in India, especially around Bengaluru, the big tech city. It's a story about water, yeah, but maybe more about the desperate search for water and what that means for millions of people.
It is critical, absolutely. And digging into this, we found some, well, frankly, alarming insights. What keeps coming up is this deepening groundwater crisis, particularly because of the region's geology, this hard rock terrain. And it's not just, oh, there's a bit less water. No, it's wells running completely dry. It's farmers really struggling, communities facing this really uncertain future, and it seems to be speeding up too.
Yeah, that acceleration is worrying. That's why we wanted to really unpack what's happening today. We're focusing on places like the Upper Arkavathi watershed, specifically these local village council areas, Gram Panchayats called Alunamalaj and Dalithamakuru. We're going to look at the data. Some of it's pretty shocking. Try to understand why it's happening, hear the human side of it, and then, see what's being done and maybe what's not being done yet.
And just to give everyone a sense of the scale here, I mean, some of the stats about how deep they're drilling now are just mind-boggling. Could you break that down for us? How much has it changed?
It's a really stark picture. If you look back, say, 2001 to 2011, the average borewell depth, around 183 meters. But fast forward to the next decade, 2011 to 2021, that average depth jumped to 321 meters.
Wow. 321 meters. That's
Yeah.
that's almost double. It's a 76% increase, yeah, in just 10 years. It really shows the desperate lengths people are having to go to. And here's the kicker. Even drilling that deep, a huge number of wells are just failing. In our Lamelage, it's something like 55% of all wells failing within a decade. And for wells specifically meant for drinking water, it's even worse, 70% failure rate. This isn't about water quality being bad. This is wells running dry. Severe depletion.
It's literally a race to the bottom.
Quite literally, yes.
And that human side you mentioned, it's easy to get lost in the numbers, but these are real lives. You mentioned someone, Ramesh, a farmer in Air Village. Tell us about his situation.
Yeah, Ramesh's story is unfortunately quite typical. His family well, which they relied on, it ran dry last year. So now he's facing this impossible choice. He can try to drill a new well, but that costs a fortune, maybe 4 or 5 lakh rupees. That's, maybe 5 or 6,000 US dollars, a huge sum there. Or he gives up, abandons his land, his livelihood, and moves his family to the city, hoping for work.
That's devastating. Leaving your home, your way of life, just for water. So this brings us to the big question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Why? Why is this happening? What's causing this perfect storm?
Well, a really big piece of the puzzle, maybe the foundation of it, is the geology itself. Most of Karnataka sits on what's called hard rock terrain. Think basalt, granite. Now, unlike softer rocks, like sandstone, which can hold water like a sponge, hard rock doesn't.
Right.
Water only exists in these tiny little cracks, these fractures, or maybe in the slightly weathered top layer. And those pockets of water, they get used up incredibly quickly when you start pumping heavily. It's like trying to suck water out of concrete almost. It's a geological lottery, really, and this region just didn't get a winning ticket for water storage.
So the land itself makes it tough. But then human activity on top of that must be making it worse, like agriculture.
Oh, absolutely. That's the next major factor, the farming practices. Farmers around Bengaluru, they're growing crops that need a lot of water, vegetables, flowers, stuff that sells well in the city. And here's a huge issue. Electricity for agricultural pumps is often free or heavily subsidized.
So there's no real incentive to conserve water.
Exactly. It encourages overpumping. Why wouldn't you pump if it doesn't cost you more? We've seen figures suggesting Bengaluru's agricultural areas are extracting something like 187% of the groundwater that naturally replenishes each year.
187%. That's not sustainable.
Not even close. It's essentially mining water that took decades or centuries to accumulate, and a lot of that is driven by the demand from the city itself.
Which brings us to Bengaluru, the tech hub, growing like crazy. That must put enormous pressure on water resources, too.
Immense pressure. The city's thirst is just insatiable. And it relies heavily on groundwater. The percentage of the city's needs met by groundwater keeps climbing. It was around 66% in 2023, jumped to over 68% in 2024. It's like building this huge modern city on a foundation that's literally shrinking as the water gets pulled out.
And it used to be different, didn't it? I read that Bengaluru historically relied on a network of lakes and tanks. What happened there?
That's another critical piece, yes. Before the 1970s, maybe even later, the city and surrounding areas had this intricate network of Kier local lakes or tanks. These were vital. They captured rainwater, allowed it to slowly seep down and recharge the groundwater, natural water harvesting.
So like natural batteries for the aquifers.
Exactly. But now, in areas like Erelumalish, many of these tanks are just gone. They're either completely dry, silted up, or they've been built over, urban sprawl. So that natural recharge system, it's basically broken. Rainwater just runs off instead of replenishing the supply.
Okay, so you have difficult geology, you have agriculture pumping way too much, a thirsty city growing rapidly, and the natural recharge system is broken. That's quite a list.
It really is a perfect storm of factors, unfortunately.
And when we look at the wider impact,
Yeah.
beyond individual farmers like Ramesh, what does this do to whole communities, economically, socially?
Economically, it's crippling. Think about those Grem Panchayats, the local councils. They're getting pushed into huge debt, often electrical debt from running pumps constantly. Because wells keep failing, they have to keep drilling new ones. That money could be going to maintaining roads, schools, basic sanitation, but instead it's chasing water.
A vicious cycle.
Absolutely. And socially, water scarcity breeds conflict, disputes over access to wells. Sometimes it even turns violent, and it forces migration. People have to leave their homes, their land, just to find water elsewhere, often ending up in slums in the cities.
And you mentioned earlier, it hits women and children hardest.
Disproportionately so, yes. Fetching water is traditionally seen as women's work in many parts of India. So as wells dry up and they have to walk further, sometimes for hours, it's women and girls who bear that burden. Carrying heavy pots, spending hours each day just on water. That means girls miss school, women can't work or engage in other productive activities. It traps families in poverty.
It's a humanitarian issue hidden within an environmental crisis.
Precisely.
And then, to add another layer, even if they find water, is it safe? We hear about contamination issues, nitrates.
That's a huge concern, yes. It's not just about quantity, it's quality, too. We're seeing high levels of nitrates in many groundwater samples, often well above the safe limit of 50 milligrams per liter. This usually comes from agricultural runoff fertilizers and also from untreated sewage seeping into the ground.
And nitrates are dangerous.
Very dangerous, especially for infants. It can cause something called blue baby syndrome, methemoglobinemia, where the baby's blood can't carry enough oxygen. It's a serious health risk. So even when they drill deep and find water, there's a real question mark over whether it's even safe to drink without expensive treatment.
Okay, so the picture's pretty grim. What's being done about it? Are there government programs trying to tackle this?
There are initiatives, yes. Things like the Sushala project, which focuses on groundwater recharge structures trying to help rainwater seep back into the ground. Then there's the Jal Jeevan mission, a big national push to get piped water to every rural household. That involves funding new pipelines, but also sometimes replacing these failed borewells. And there's talk of expanding Atal Bhujal Yojana, which is more about management, getting communities involved in water budgeting, trying to manage demand better.
Those sound positive
Yeah.
on the surface, but are they enough? What are the experts saying?
Well, that's where the skepticism comes in. We heard from Lakshmikanta NR, who works directly on these issues. And his point was pretty blunt. He said, basically, unless you fundamentally change the farming practices, the over-extraction, all the recharge efforts in the world won't fix the underlying problem.
Right, trying to fill a bucket with holes in it.
Exactly. He even predicted, quite starkly, that without major changes to extraction, particularly in agriculture, some areas might have no usable groundwater left in just 3 or 4 years.
Wow, that's soon. That's incredibly worrying.
It is. It highlights the urgency. Recharge is good, piped water is good, but they don't solve the core issue of taking out far more water than goes back in.
Did we see any good news recently? I think there were reports about pre-monsoon rains in mid-2025 helping a bit. Something about levels rising in some districts.
Yes, there was a temporary uptick. Some pre-monsoon showers did raise groundwater levels, maybe by about 4 meters on average, in around 85 taluks or sub-districts across Karnataka.
Yeah.
And any rise is welcome, of course. It provides a little breathing room. But It's likely temporary. The overall trend year on year is still downwards. And crucially, that massive overextraction, especially around Bengaluru, still at 187%, hasn't stopped. The statewide dependency on groundwater also edged up again in 2024. So while a good rain helps, it doesn't reverse the long-term decline caused by overuse.
So, not a turning point, just a brief pause.
That seems to be the consensus, yes.
Okay, so if the current path isn't working, what is the way forward? Based on everything we've discussed, what would a real solution look like?
It has to be multi-pronged. There's no single silver bullet. First, agriculture has to change. We need a major shift towards water-saving techniques. Drip irrigation should be the norm, not the exception. Encouraging farmers to plant less thirsty crops, crops better suited to the climate, maybe even compensating them directly for using less electricity, less water.
So tackling the demand side in farming, what about infrastructure? Fixing those broken recharge systems?
Absolutely essential. We need serious investment in rebuilding that natural recharge capacity. That means building more check dams, recharge pits, and really importantly, restoring those traditional lakes and tanks. Cleaning them up, desilting them, protecting them from encroachment, widespread rainwater harvesting too, at every level, households, communities, industries, capture the rain when it falls.
And regulating how much water is taken out. Is that feasible?
It's difficult, but probably necessary. Things like metering agricultural wells so you know how much is being used. Maybe linking subsidies or other benefits to proven water conservation efforts. Making over-extraction financially painful.
And what about people? Getting communities involved. And maybe looking beyond groundwater.
Community awareness is key. People need to understand the crisis, why conservation matters, what they can do. It needs a massive public education effort. And yes, we absolutely need to invest seriously in alternatives, especially for a big city like Bengaluru. That could mean large-scale wastewater recycling for non-drinking purposes, flushing toilets, watering parks, industrial use, maybe even desalination on the coast, although that's expensive and energy-intensive. But all options need to be on the table.
It sounds like a comprehensive plan, but you mentioned hurdles earlier. Implementing all this, it's not easy, is it? Politically, socially?
Not at all. Every single one of those solutions faces challenges. Changing farming habits that are generations old, huge resistance. Metering wells, politically explosive. Asking city dwellers to pay more for recycled water or desalinated water. Always unpopular. Restoring lakes might mean relocating settlements that have encroached on them. It requires enormous political courage, sustained effort across governments, and crucially, buy-in from the public. That's the really hard part.
It really brings it all together, doesn't it? We've gone from the deep geology to the farmer's choices, the city's growth, the lost lakes. It's incredibly complex. Stepping back from all the details, what's the main thing that strikes you from this deep dive?
For me, it's how this situation in Karnataka, this specific regional crisis, is really a mirror. It reflects the broader challenges of water security that we're seeing all over the world. It also really highlights that just knowing things, having the data isn't enough. That knowledge has to be understood, accepted, and acted upon. Critical thinking is so vital when there's so much information. And it just screams for a joined-up approach. Policy, technology, community action, they all have to work together. You can't just pick one.
So for everyone listening, maybe not in Karnataka, but somewhere else, what's the takeaway? Why does this matter to them?
Well, I think this isn't just a story about India. It's a really stark reminder, isn't it, that water, this thing we assume is infinite, is actually very finite. And it shows how connected everything is: city life, farming, the environment. Our choices have consequences, sometimes far away, sometimes right under our feet. It really makes you ask, doesn't it? How can we in our own lives, our own communities, be better stewards of water, more mindful? Because what we found here is that just drilling deeper, chasing the water further down, that's not solving the problem. It's just treating a symptom. The real solution has to be about rethinking everything: how we use water, how we manage it, how much we truly value it. Because, as we've seen today, water is life. And if we don't change course, that future could be very dry indeed. It's a crisis we just can't afford to ignore.